All right, Ben. Should we kind of dive into our tops of the year of 2020?
Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to talk about our top albums and our top songs. I don't know, again, like I don't like to do definitive top 3 or top 4, 5, whatever. It's more of like 3 albums that really stood out to me, 3 albums that I really liked, or 3 songs. So that's kind of at least how I took it for this one. But yeah, let's dive into it, and let's just start with our top albums.
Shall I kick it off here? All right. So
Sure.
For me, we just talked a little bit about Marcus King, so I'll just kind of kick off with that one. Again, I think this one was released the earliest out of my 3, so I'm just going to go in chronological order that they're released, basically. So Marcus King, Eldorado, released on January 17th, I think was such a nice and beautiful, warm album that I absolutely feel like it's a whole album. I think it's one of those albums that's complete front to back, where there isn't really a lot of flaws in it. Not a lot of redundancy. There's a perfect mix of rock, slow songs, some sweet love songs, some really reflective personal songs. So really a whole album all the way through. Again, it just has so many different touches: gospel, southern rock, twangy blues. It just has so much in it that you really do feel like you're getting like a full breath of music as well. Again, like I said, Marcus King met up with Dan Auerbach. Auerbach produced this album, and for whatever reason, I really appreciate Dan's work throughout his career when he does production. I think this one is just such a beautiful production as well, all the way through. Definitely some highlight songs that I really love off of there. Say You Will, Young Man's Dream, which actually opens the whole thing. It's absolutely wonderful. Churn It Up, One Day She's Here, and then The Well. Those are just a few of the songs, but literally when you listen to it all the way through, I think it's absolutely fantastic album.
Yeah, that's a good album, and I'm glad you put it on the list. And I was pleasantly surprised by that album, because a lot of what I'd heard of Marcus King prior to that album was that very shreddy blues, which, again, phenomenal guitar playing, but it's like that's just kind of where I kind of lose interest. Is like it's good for a song or two, but then it all kind of starts to sound the same, and that's kind of how I feel about some of these shredder guys like Joe Bonamassa. Great guitar player, has some great songs, but it's a lot of the same blues song, extended guitar solo, verse, extended guitar solo, that kind of thing. And it kind of gets old after a while. But this one, there was a lot of progress on the songwriting, development, structure, style. And he didn't just lean on the guitar. He used it as a selective tool to enhance the song, rather than just being like, here's another blues song when I'm going to shred in the key of E this time, and next song I'll shred in the key of B.
Yeah, totally. And you get it where there's very little guitar work actually done in it, where it's the forefront, I should say, where it's like the focus. There's only probably like 2 or 3 solos throughout the whole album. Yeah.
Yep. So my first album that I want to talk about came out February 14th, 2020 this year. And this is, of course, The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. This was a highly anticipated album for myself, and when it came out, I wasn't really disappointed. I think it's Kevin Parker's most complete effort to date, and it was accompanied by a full arena tour. He finally got the payoff that he might have been looking for, and got that notoriety that I think Tame Impala deserves. And they were playing big arenas and big stadiums. I'm assuming their tour got cut short. I think it started maybe late 2019 and was going into 2020. I think they were scheduled to play here in Chicago sometime in the spring. I didn't have tickets for that one. They were, I think, a little more expensive, and I've already seen Tame Impala a few times, so it's like, I get it, do your thing, make your money, but I'm going to have to sit this one out because it's just a little too much for me. But this album, full of emotion, every song feels relatable in some sort of way. It's very dance and synth heavy, which I think kind of brings in that pop element for me that I was talking about earlier in this podcast. And that's kind of what got me into this. It's good music, and there's lots of variety within it, though. It's not just the same the whole time.
Exactly.
It's more developed and more advanced, and he relies, like Marcus King does, on these tools to make the song and craft it. And this album really just takes you on a journey and you feel the emotion that he was feeling and the heaviness that he was feeling. And you can feel this in this album, and every song's a little bit different, but takes you on this own journey. I think it's held down by Posthumous Forgiveness, which, spoiler alert, might come up later in this show. I think that's, to me, the best song on this album. I think a lot of people would disagree with that. And there's been, I've seen other lists, and there's usually a different song from this album on each list for like top songs of the year. So I think that kind of speaks to this album and what it's done. The fact that one person thinks that Breathe Deeper is the best song. One person thinks One More Year is the best song. I think Posthumous Forgiveness is the best song. So I think that says a lot about this album and what
totally.
it is.
It's actually one of the better concept albums throughout the whole year as well. I think it's actually one of those foretellers almost, kind of like how how we saw with like Glass Animals and other kind of like Brit bands that were coming out with some music earlier in the summer. But it really, Tame Impala really did a wonderful job with really telling a story. There's little breaks and kind of like dropping in little reprises of sounds throughout the album and stuff like that. Very well produced as usual.
Yep.
Kevin Parker does fantastic production work for his music basically, and that was one of the better produced ones throughout, and great ideas and storytelling.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So my next one is one that we both share, I think, for an album after I saw your list. And it's going to be our friend. It would be Our Friends with Buffalo Fuzz, Volume 2. That was released June 5th, and to me, it is one of my favorite things about it is the beauty of how much from first album to second album in the growth is fantastic, especially with melody, with riffing all the way through. Jake had a little bit better time with his drums, so he wasn't just kind of like drumming on Jared's stuff. It just really was a band effort, and both those guys kicked fucking ass on this. I think side A is a smash and flows so well together. So like if we're taking the vinyl, like that's how I listen to it. It's the first 6 songs and they just flow so well together. But then side B comes on, or the final 4 or 5 songs, and it just finishes the album so wonderfully. It is a complete album, kind of like how I was saying with Eldorado. I really felt this one is one of those all the way through rock ones, kind of like early Rival Sons almost, where it's just like straight through mostly rock in your face, but there's some soft moments occasionally where it's still kick-ass rock yet it's just straight up kick-ass great music all the way through. Some of the highlight songs I love off of there is The Reaper, Buffalo Stomp. Personal favorite, Buffalo Stomp, I got the Buffalo Old Fuzz Gin, so it's an old fashioned named after the Buffalo Fuzz to help out, just say, hey, look at this, it's awesome. Black Sheep Blues, wonderful. I'm on Fire, Too Young to Die, Sunshine for Your Love, which is the other thing I wanted to say in there too, is I think they have the best cover song of the year that I've heard, just because I did not know I was listening to the Sunshine of Your Love, which is an old Cream song that I think was written by Clapton, but I think it was just mainly the 3 band members. But they totally turned it upside down on its head. Basically, did like a Joe Cocker did with a little help from my friends, taking it from the Beatles. That's what he did here, almost like they turned it into their own, which was badass. Because I seriously did not know what I was listening to until I had to go through the second time. So, Buffalo Fuzz Volume 2, definitely a great one. Not only just because it's a local artist and a friend of the podcast, but it literally was an album that, if you look at my Spotify, it's Temples, Beatles, and pretty much Buffalo Fuzz Volume 2 from this year.
Yep. Yeah, there's a reason this album, Buffalo Fuzz Volume 2 by Buffalo Fuzz, made both of our lists this year. It's everything I want on a rock album. It's got electrifying riffs, high energy, songs that tell a story. And a nice thing about this album is every song's different. It has variety. It's not the same song 11 different ways. Each song tells its own story, and some songs lean heavy on the guitar, others more on the vocal melody, some are driven by the drums. I mean, it's all over the place, which I think makes for a great album. It's not the same thing over and over. Black Sheep Blues is my favorite on the album. I think that one's just such a kick-ass song. but really there's not a bad song on this album. So yeah, there's a reason it made both of our lists. It's that good. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. We did a full-on album review of it, and we also sat down with Jared Zachary and talked about this album on one of those episodes that came out in June of this year. So it's probably about 20 episodes back. So it's probably around episode 50 or so, might be episode 52, somewhere in there. So check that out. Otherwise, just search Buffalo Fuzz and then go listen to that album, because it's just
it's
pretty
really
kick-ass.
And definitely a fun part of our podcast was being able to connect with Buffalo Fuzz just in general, because it's right up our alley for rock and roll music, and to be able to get lucky enough to get a second album out of them after the tragedy of Jake taking his own life. This is a beautiful dedication that Jared brought out for his buddy and beautiful music collaborator. So great opportunity for us to have this piece of music in our lives, to, after you and I discovered them from our first year in the podcast, and it was our second episode. So
Yep.
Yeah, and it's rare that we have one. Last year we didn't have an album that we crisscrossed either. So this was one that we both definitely knew it was in our soul, bro.
I had a feeling this would show up on both
this one was
lists.
the only one that I kind of thought we would touch upon. But my third one that made my top three, but one that I really loved right when it first popped out on April 10th. So my third major one that we'll talk about on my side is Pokey Lafarge's Rock Bottom Rhapsody. I kind of thought you might have snuck this one in there, but I was like, no, I don't know if this one will go up there. But I absolutely loved this album when it first popped out, man. Pokey's always been a favorite of mine since the first time you introduced me, when we got to go see him December 7th, 2013, when it was with Jack Klatt as well. But Pokey Lafarge, Rock Bottom Rhapsody, absolutely a wonderful little piece. I think what made me excited was that it was a step above and almost reached the greatness of Something in the Water. But this one stepped up its game after Manic Revelations, that was released in 2018, I think. No, 2017. And it was not as heavy. It was just not as good. There's something seemed to be off with Manic Revelations to me. For me, what made Rock Bottom Rhapsody was, I think he really looked inward at himself again. So kind of going back to what we were saying with Marcus King kind of having that reflective lyricism. Definitely Pokey dives deep into that with this one. Very depressive, very blues-like, almost jazz-like towards it. So he really kind of stepped away from the Americana kind of sound that a lot of people kind of attune him to, and he really did bring in a lot of beautiful music. So there were touches of Pokey from his past, but there was definitely growth in that music and the lyricism as well. He's still so very fun with his lyrics. Absolutely wonderful. I just really felt, it was excellent music that he delivered. Some highlight songs, Fuck Me Up, Fallen Angel, Bluebird. Bluebird is so wonderful, especially when he was doing the Instagram shows. Or at least I'd watch him on Instagram, maybe on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook Live. And those basement show tapes shows were absolutely wonderful. Bluebird was the one that really stole for me when he sung it solo by himself. It's absolutely a great steal. There's also reprises throughout. Rock Bottom Rhapsody reprises throughout the song to kind of give it this Showtimey feel. Very cool idea. So great work on that. And then the last song that was really wonderful is Lucky Sometimes. I always think back to Tom Petty saying even the losers get lucky sometimes, and it's very much the Pokey kind of version of that without ripping off Tom Petty at all. So Rock Bottom Rhapsody, Pokey Lafarge, absolutely wonderful. Definitely check it out. It's a high quality vinyl.
Yeah, it was a great album. I'm really glad you had it on this list because, in my opinion, it might be my favorite Pokey album. Might be, in my opinion, Pokey's best album. I think because of the emotion, because of the story, but musically, it's phenomenal as well. A lot of good things to say about that one.
Such a great one. All right, Ben, what do you got next?
So my last one is, like I said, it's the year of pop for me. So this one is Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa. This one came out March 27th, 2020. This is not an album that we talked about on this podcast. We did not do an album review of this one, but I've talked about it on several episodes. And this is another one that is solid front to back. It embraces funk, it embraces disco, and it really separates itself because of that from pop music of today. It doesn't really sound like a lot of pop music. Yes, you can tell it's pop music. It's got dance beats, it's got synths, it's got all of that. It's got the polished vocals, but there's something that just, to me, when I first heard it, I was like, there's something different about this one. And I think part of that is there is still a lot of focus on instrumentation, even though it's still synth heavy and dance heavy. But there's a good amount of drums, there's a good amount of bass, there's a good amount of guitar that's featured in this album. And the first song that really got me hooked was one of the singles, Don't Start Now. And I think it's track number 2 on the album. And I first played it because I'd heard it and people were giving it good reviews. And I was like, all right, I'll check this thing out and see what it's all about. And I listened to it and I got through that second one and I was just blown away because the bass line in that is just so funky. It's funky as hell. Like, you got to check it out. If you only listen to one song, start there, but I think you'll want to listen to the rest of them. And there's splashes of psychedelic in there mixed with dance music. It's just a really good combo, and it could be a cop-out, but because a lot of people are giving this one a high review, and it's always up there from what I've seen on lists and like the top 10 albums of the year, whatever. But it really is that good. And for a pop album, I wanted to give some recognition since we are more of a rock show. Wanted to give a shout out to the pop world as well, because I think they are doing some good things. And I think this is one of those albums.
No, definitely. And as we stated in a couple episodes before, during the Miley Cyrus episodes, I do remember you like saying something about Dua Lipa earlier in the year, but it's like it just dropped from my consciousness. And then when we got to Prisoner, and you and I both picked that song out instantly. It was like the best song. This is the song that cooks. That made me like a Dua Lipa fan for sure, because not only just, like I said, I didn't really appreciate Miley Cyrus's vocals too much, just her vocal delivery, but together with Dua Lipa in that and the style of music and the quality of production on that fucking sold me in a heartbeat right there.
Yep. Yeah, lots of good things to say about that one. And then really quick, just some other albums. I know we can never not do like an honorable mention sort of thing because we both just have trouble committing. So, few other ones that I really like. Cutting Grass Volume 1 by Sturgill Simpson. That one came out in October, just released. Bluegrass Masterpiece, just released Volume 2 in mid-December. I haven't gotten through that one yet. Just starting to. I listened to a couple tracks this morning. But that's a great one. Listen to that one. Another one for me, Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen by Kid Cudi. That one just came out, I think, in December. I haven't spent a lot of time with that one yet, but what I've heard, the couple times I've listened through it, big fan so far. Shout out to Plastic Hearts by Miley Cyrus. That was another one that just came out at the end of November. Big year for pop, like I said, and I think it's being billed as a rock album. It's not. It's a pop album with rock elements to it. So I think if you listen to it with that notion, because someone commented on our Instagram and they were like, oh, this album sucks, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's a take. But I think they were expecting this person was expecting a rock album.
Did not get it.
And you're just not going to get that. There's rock elements to it. But it's like, if you listen to it as a pop album and appreciate the rock elements in it, it's a much, much better album if you look at it that way. Another one, That's How Rumors Get Started, Margot Price. We talked about her at the top of the show. Year of country music there. And then another one that's gotten huge acclaim, and I just wanted to talk about this one, is Bob Dylan's Rough and Rowdy Ways. I'm wearing my Bob Dylan shirt right now. That one, I've listened to it a few times. I don't quite get it, but that one's always up there too in those album charts of like top albums of the year. That's always up there. It just hasn't clicked with me. I'm going to give it a few more tries because like Bob Dylan's one of my all-time favorites. There's just something, I don't know. I think I really need to focus on the lyrics because I think that's what's putting it over the edge for a lot of people is just the lyricism in that one. And he's just the same Bob Dylan he's always been with his poetry and the way he words things and the cleverness. So I think I really got to spend time with that. I want it to be good. Musically, it's like, okay, it doesn't do much for me, but it's Bob Dylan, so I'm going to give it another shot. I've also been hearing good things about McCartney 3, which just came out. I've listened through it once, and I was like, that is pretty good. So I'm going to spend more time with that one as well. But those are kind of some other albums I wanted to give a shout out to.
McCartney 3 is one that it's on my list now. And definitely, I think the main reason they hyped up Bob Dylan's album was probably so that they could sell his catalog and get more money, That's probably why everybody's beefing that up. But to take off of your notable albums, I got a few here. Larkin Poe, was a very good one. That almost made whatever I would have announced for my top 3. So that one was really high for me. Just absolutely wonderful musicians that they are. I just sent you a video this morning of them doing Kiss from a Rose. Did you get that? Yeah. Excellent version by them. Fantastic. The Poe sisters are fantastic. One that I really, really enjoyed is Khruangbin's Mordecai. That one is absolutely wonderful. I definitely would highly recommend it. It's very good, kind of like progressive rock, but has some funk, soul. Really good stuff in it all the way through and through. They're wonderful musicians. I really found them through. Another one that needs to be mentioned is the Leon Bridges Texas Sun EP that was released in February. That was fantastic as well. That was with also Khruangbin. Sylvan Esso's Free Love, absolutely love. I've been getting into more EDM and that electronic sound a little bit. Maybe not so much into... who's that? Bon Iver. I'm not so much into the electronic vocals of Bon Iver yet. That one's an acquired taste. I don't care that he's from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Huff. But I've just gotten into different aspects of electronic music. Like I said, I'm buying a synthesizer. I just really want to play around with it and kind of get those weird sounds like Kraftwerk and shit like that. But Sylvan Esso's Free Love was a really nice album to kind of get at the beginning of the year. Also helped me through a lot of my house build, so it was absolutely wonderful to have Sylvan Esso back. Tao and the Get Down Stay Down, I've been a huge fan of theirs probably since 2014 or so when I first discovered them. Tao had their album Temple come out earlier this year. Very fantastic. Tao still at her best, still growing, still trying out new sounds. Wonderful music in that one. And of course, kind of an old staple, going back to Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Just a fantastic look into Fiona Apple kind of coming back a little bit. A lot of her first 2 albums don't get a lot of credit from the 90s, I think. And she actually came back very good with this puppy. Definitely highly recommend it, especially if you have kind of a Fiona Apple nostalgia from the 90s. This one kind of gets back with it, but it's still just like a rockin'. It kind of is that 90s rock back almost, but it sounds so good and clean today that she just kicks ass.
Yep. Yeah, that was a very good album. I was surprised by that one too. I saw as like on new releases for 2020 when it came out, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll give this a shot. Not knowing, because like it's been a while since. I guess I really haven't heard of her since the 90s. Didn't know, I'm sure she's been doing stuff as well, but I saw this one came out and it's like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I listened to it and it's like, oh yeah, this is pretty fucking good. Like I was pleasantly surprised. There's some cool, good songs in there. So yeah, I recommend giving that one a listen to.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank Jill Riley for reminding me when it came out, when I was listening to The Current. I forgot that I had heard that it was coming out at some point this year, but she reminded me and played a couple of the old tracks as well as the new tracks. I think it was album of the week for The Current, so I'm glad that she reminded me. So I got to check it out way back when.